All right, so let's get this party started. What up, y'all? DHR2 Productions back with another episode of Let's Talk. It's been a long time since I live streamed on the StreamYard, and we're back with a brand new episode of Let's Talk. By the way, this is season 2, so this is episode 4, which we're going to be covering the spoiler review of No Way Home and talk about the Godzilla versus the Power Ranger comics. And you know what? We're going to start things off with the Spider-Man No Way Home. Now, yesterday I watched and I reviewed this film, and let's just say this film touched me in so many ways that I never thought I would feel in this film going into it. Now, yesterday, just like everybody else, I was waiting for this film to come out on the free movie app, even on the Fire Stick. But it's my apologies, y'all. So I think for the most part, this film really had me crying 3 times. And when I say I was going to spoil it, yeah, if you're watching the stream, I advise y'all to not watch the video because there's going to come a point in time where if you're just tuning in, get ready to go for a ride. So look, as I was watching this movie, um, there are some big surprises that came into this film. And y'all seen the first fight with Doc Ock from the Sam Raimi trilogy. And we've seen the Green Goblin showed up, which had me on the edge of my seat. The fight between Spider-Man and Doc Ock was one of the best I've seen. I love the fight choreography, even though it was fully CGI. But I think for the most part, it just feels so good to see a Sam Raimi villain in the MCU version. You know what? This film alone was so good. I feel like I should watch it again tomorrow, just so that I get, so I could get a clear understanding of why I'm watching this film. And you want to know what else that really surprised me? The fact that Aunt May was killed off by the Green Goblin. Because let me tell you something. The whole situation with the Green Goblin, because his past self was coming back to him, and William, William he. Let me tell you something. William he, as the Green Goblin, he came in with fire expectations when it comes to his acting performances. I mean, he made you feel like you were watching a Sam Raimi movie in the MCU. And this definitely felt like a Sam Raimi movie when it comes to the Green Goblin and Doc Ock. And not to mention that Sandman was also into this movie, and the Lizard from The Amazing Spider-Man, him and Electro. And I think the Green Goblin is one of my favorite villains in Sam Raimi movies. Um, and The Amazing Spider-Man is a good film, in my honest opinion. Um, but then they showed a scene when Peter was trying to cure everybody in the try to get them to be their normal self. And it worked on Doc Ock. Doc Ock pretty much felt normal up until the Green Goblin came out and came back with the glider. When Peter's spider senses were going through the roof, he sensed something was coming in. And the more I was watching this film, I was just waiting for some good action to come in, and it did. So the fight with the Green Goblin was really good. The fight with the villains was just epic. They were all over the place. It was up until when Aunt May was trying to save Peter Parker. The Green Goblin kills Aunt May, stabbing her with the back with the glider. Man, I was screaming from the edge of my seat. I'm like, are you kidding me? That was literally my reaction when the Green Goblin killed Aunt May off. And I was like, oh my God. And then when he threw that grenade and Peter deflected it, Aunt May and Peter survived, but Aunt May was already dying from that stab wound in the back. And oh goodness, Tom Holland made me cry in that scene when his Aunt May passed away. I'm like, if it wasn't for that Green Goblin, man, Aunt May should have been in there. She should have stayed alive. Because I was just sitting there screaming, and I was really worried for Aunt May up until that point when they killed her off. And the moment when he was bawling his eyes out, I was crying with him. Yeah, your boy was crying you know what I'm saying, while watching this movie, because this film was not only emotional, but it made me care about these characters. It's like these type of movies have ways of sucking you in to the moments where you just want to care for them, but at the same time, you know that the shady stuff they're doing in the movie, but at the same time, you don't know what they're going through and for the reasons why they're doing what they're doing. It's like you want to have some type of sympathy for them. But man, when the Green Goblin killed off Aunt May, woo, man, you talk about emotional. It comes when Jonah Jameson was telling everybody that how Peter Parker is continuing to mess up everywhere he goes. Trust me, I remember the movie by heart because I've seen it yesterday. So I really don't need to watch it again because I already know the deal. So to me, his friends came to consult him, and he just started crying. No, actually, it was before that. So right after his friends were, MJ and, dang, I forgot the dude's name, but it was him and MJ were trying to figure out where Peter Parker is until Peter's friend actually has on this ring that Doctor Strange was wearing to open the portals. The first portal ended up opening and it was the Amazing Spider-Man Peter Parker, aka Andrew Garfield Spider-Man, ends up showing up, and the theaters went bonkers when they showed up. I mean, when they showed him. And Andrew Garfield, man, he did good in this movie. He definitely stole the show. He was a lot funny. Him and Tobey Maguire. Speaking of Toby, yeah, man, he not aged. So he ain't like what he used to be 20 years ago when his movie came out. But guess what? He's still a part of that Spider-Man legacy that we all know and love. So he ends up being in this movie, and him and Andrew had this confrontation when they started shooting webs at each other. They ended up missing and being acrobatics. And I'm just thinking, yeah, having these two in this movie really, really made me excited even more because I want to see what else they have in stores. So I think to me, the best scene is when they show Peter's friends consulting him, and then Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield ended up showing up, and they all had this emotional moment when Tom Holland's Peter was trying to tell two different generations of Peter, look, y'all don't know what I'm going through. Y'all don't understand what I did wrong, but it's time for you to go. Like y'all need to go home now. But then Andrew Garfield made me cry once again when he said that it was his fault that he couldn't save Gwen Stacy. And Tobey Maguire's Peter said that it was his fault that his Uncle Ben was killed because Uncle Ben was trying to tell Peter Parker something different. And oh my goodness, like that whole scene alone really made me shook. It was so emotional to the point where I almost lost it, but I had to hold my composure. But I was crying though. Don't get me wrong. This but this scene made me lose it for the most part because it was like emotional connection. The way it was done, the way it was handled perfectly, the right timing, it was just so good. And they all got together to work on their webbings. And Tobey Maguire's Peter Parker's webbings were kind of strong than Andrew Garfield's and Tom Holland's Spider-Man webbings. So they all had a plan to try to carry everybody when they took the fight at the Statue of Liberty. And there was this funny moment with Andrew and Tommy's Peter having a funny conversation and this funny dynamic. And then Peter Parker was starting talking about his back. And if y'all remember Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2, when Peter was trying to get his powers back by jumping across from roof to roof, he ended up bumping into so many cars to the point where his back was starting to hurt. And that was that nice little callback they did, and I love that so much. But it did look they kind of sus when Andrew Garfield was behind Tobey Maguire's back like that, try to get us back to normal. I mean, I gotta admit that did look kind of sus, but at least Toby's Peter Parker's back felt kind of better. So the fight broke out with Electro and Jamie Foxx's Electro in the MCU. They did him right. It was perfect, comic accurate. It looked perfect. I feel like it was done right, and he was wearing the Electro mask that he wore in the comics. It was much favorite, but it was much different. And plus, my man's had on Timberlands. I'm like, yeah, Electro was styling. He was styling in that film. Um, the whole fight scenes with three different Spider-Mans were so good. Then they all did their Spider-Man thing. It was so good. But let me tell you something else. There was another favorite moment of mine when MJ was about to get killed off when she was falling. Tom Holland's Peter was trying to save her, but then the Green Goblin came and just stopped him. So Andrew had to redeem himself this time by saving MJ. And there was a moment where he burst into tears when he saved MJ because it reminded him of the time when he couldn't save Gwen Stacy during The Amazing Spider-Man 2. And when he finally redeemed himself, I was crying with him too. Let me tell you something. I don't know who made me cry more. Andrew Garfield's Peter Parker or Tom Holland's Peter Parker. I didn't see Tobey Maguire's shed a tear because he knows what it's like to lose a loved one because he experienced it. So he already know the deal. So the moment when they showed Andrew Garfield's Peter crying to MJ, she was like, "Are you okay?" And he was nodding his head up and down. I was like, "Yeah," while he was in tears because that right there meant something to him. Because, like I say, he couldn't save Gwen Stacy and his Amazing Spider-Man 2. But I think this time he redeemed himself. That right there was another nice moment for me. And it was up until Doctor Strange returned, and Peter was just telling him, "Look, I'm sorry that I messed up the time, but up until it was like starting to get daytime, Peter, Tom Holland's Peter, and the Green Goblin were going at it, and this very nice fight choreographed fights, and the final scene between Spider-Man and the Green Goblin. Tom Holland's Peter was just beating the brakes out of him. It was like it's like he was unleashing the Marvel Spider-Man PS4 combos on the Green Goblin, the way he was punching and kicking and doing these acrobatic moves. When I was watching this film, I'm like, oh wow, Peter got gone rogue. I was like, this is the Spider-Man I know. The Spider-Man that is like emotionally involved to the point where he couldn't control his anger, his emotion. After losing his Aunt May, he really wanted to kill the Green Goblin. But then Toby's Peter Parker had to stop him from doing that. But then the Green Goblin stabs Toby's Peter Parker in the back. And then Peter Parker, and then Tom Holland's Peter, he was like, you know, he wanted to just kill the Green Goblin. But I think Peter Parker 3, he pretty much cured Norman Osborn. And then Norman Osborn, he realized that what he had done and he made a mistake, and he was still in a lost mind. So once all of that was over, it was a bit emotional. Once again, I cried for like 3 times straight. First, it was Aunt May's death. Then the whole 3 different generations of Peter Parker blaming themselves for losing people that they can't protect, that they couldn't save. And the final scene with Spider-Man, Peter Parker and MJ, they really got me crying, especially Zendaya. She made me cry the most. Her and Peter, and when Peter was asking Doctor Strange to make everyone forget that Peter Parker didn't exist, or people think that Peter Parker was not Spider-Man. Um, Looking back at it now, I was a bit mixed on that moment, but I kind of understand the reason why he did it because, you know, the whole world was changing differently. So everybody was disappearing. Um, Toby's and Andrew's Spider-Mans were disappearing. The villains were disappearing, going back to their dimensions, and even Tom Holland's Spider-Man was disappearing to reset the time when nobody knew who Peter Parker was as Spider-Man. So flash forward to a different time. Peter Parker ended up going to a coffee shop and he sees MJ shopping, as a waitress. And when Peter sees her, I could have sworn that they was gonna remember who they were, but it was MJ and his old friend. Um, I gotta admit, I was a bit taken back for that scene for a moment, but the way it was done all right. But then they showed a scene when he was back home, his old home, when Aunt May, yeah, it was tough. Like, and meant like you're losing your loved one, knowing that they're not here anymore, and it sucks. It sucks that they're not in presence anymore. You're just all alone in your own house. And plus, I think this is pretty much setting up for the college years of Peter Parker now that he's, getting into the adulthood. But one of my favorite scenes towards the ending of the movie, it has nothing to do with the end credits. It's when he made his own classic red and blue suit that we all know and love. When he was swinging around the buildings around New York City with the red and blue suit, not the Tony Stark MCU suit, the classic red and blue suit with the classic spider logo. When I saw that emotion, man, it was so good. It looked good. Although the CGI looked a bit rough, but it was so good to see that costume in that final scene. And a lot of people were saying that um, two end credits that were shown in this movie. The first one was I think it was Doctor Strange trailer, and according to Tyrone Manners, he was evil doctor. He was evil Doctor Strange. Hold on for a minute, I'll be right back. My apologies, y'all. I had to do something right quick. So we got Board Runner 27. What's up? What's up, Killer J Gamer? So yeah, this movie was so good. I don't know when I'm gonna see it again because I already got what I saw. I got what I needed out of this movie because I know it by heart. Everybody was accusing Spider-Man of killing Mysterio when Mysterio was the one that snitched on Peter Parker in the first place, so that everybody know who Peter Parker is now. But when Doctor Strange switched the time route, when everybody forgot who Peter Parker was, and the fact that he's actually Spider-Man, I'm wanting to know how his college years will be like when they decided to continue on with the Marvel movies. Because Tom Holland pretty much just confirmed that the Spider-Man movies will continue on during his adult years as Spider-Man now that Peter Parker is in college. I want to know what friends he's gonna make. It is MJ going to continue to be there because the dynamic between Peter and MJ is funny, but it's like kind of a love, kind of like an odd moment, if you know what I mean. So yeah, those were the spoilers. No, I forgot to tell you the second end credit I seen was Eddie Brock was at a bar, and I don't know what they were talking about because the movie app that I was watching it was in Spanish. So they all disappeared, and it was one piece of semio left in the bar. So it's been confirmed that Venom is in the MCU now, and I hope and pray that they give him the logo on his chest. Like I really hope they know what they're doing with this one. So with that being said, Spider-Man No Way Home gets a 5 out of 5 for me once again. I stand by for what I say, and I'm gonna stick by that score. But you know what? This movie really changed my life. It made me appreciate the MCU franchise when it comes to Spider-Man because Tom Holland's Spider-Man is legit. He is that Spider-Man now, and it's starting to show. All right, so let's switch gears to the news that came out recently from Boom Studios and IDW. Godzilla versus the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Now, look, I love both franchises. I covered this story yesterday, and I was excited about it, even though my reading sucked for the most part. But let's just say the information I got was from the writer that really was inspired to put the two concepts together to clash with one another in a comic series, 5-part comic series. The same way they did with the Ninja Turtles and Power Rangers, they're doing the same thing with Godzilla versus Power Rangers. And one can assume that if you summon Tommy, no, if Tommy summons the Dragon Zord and Godzilla fighting in the comics, dude, I can only imagine how good the comics are going to end up doing. Like, I'm calling it right now. I just hope and pray that they don't mess this up because season one of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, it was just a dinosaur theme. So it kind of makes sense to have the dinosaurs versus Godzilla because Godzilla is a dinosaur creature looking. And the Dragon Zord was inspired by Godzilla. I don't know why it took me so long to say that, but I was just thinking. So you know what? For the most part, I'm definitely excited for this comic coming in March of 2022, which is something that I'm looking forward to. And last year, I did drew Godzilla for the first time, and I said never again because it was so many parts that it was hard for me to grab on and connect to the character as I was drawing him. So I think for the most part, I'm excited to see it because I know, well, the Kaiju franchise has some human heroes, but the Tokusatsu Power Rangers has some heroes too, like Sentai and Power Rangers. You know, just seeing them fight in a martial arts battle, I feel like this was meant for adults who grew up with Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, and then you turn them into modern style, and this is crazy. So yeah, I mean this comic is something that is not only interesting, but I'm here for it. So I'm gonna wait for a few minutes. I mean, wait for a few moments or a few minutes for everybody else to come because I've already notified the movie universe on Twitter and on the Discord, so that he'll be able to come in and we'll just talk about the Godzilla and Power Rangers comic. So if not, I'll just end the stream here. If not, then I'll just end the stream. Hello, is everybody here? Oh, that's what I said. If not, I'll just end the stream. So, like I said, if you haven't seen this movie, go check it out. It's really good. If you don't have the money to go to the theaters to see it for yourself, to experience the feeling of being in the theaters, wear a mask, stay safe, social distance, protect yourself. If not, stay home and watch it on the Fire Stick or the free movie app. So, like I said, this movie is so good, and it is the final movie of the high school Spider-Man trilogy on to the next trilogy, which is the adult year, the Spider-Man in adult years. So, like I said, I don't know what the future holds for the Spider-Man franchise, but I think Tom Holland, for the most part, is embracing the Spider-Man character, and that's what made me respect the actor for doing what he loves. So, yeah, I thank y'all for coming out, um, watching the stream. I know there's not a lot of people that came out, but I'll probably make sure that a lot of people get enough of the stream that I've done. So, yeah, y'all take it easy, man.